Welcome. In today's episode, I want to talk about a phrase you've likely heard before. Start with why. But I want to ask some questions that may challenge the way you've heard this talked about before. What if your why isn't fixed? What if it's meant to evolve as you grow? What if your leadership edge is actually sharpened, not by the past, but by a future you dare to envision? Let's talk about how to find your why and how to let it change you. Let me start with a personal story. Last year, I had a comfortable job. I had a good income. I liked the people I worked with. I liked the work itself, and I had a lot of choice about what I worked on. Over the last 10 years, I'd helped to build a profitable business with a reliable customer base. We liked our customers. The work we did was useful. And I chose to leave. Why would someone want to leave a good situation like that? Believe me, my wife especially wondered. In the end, it comes down to my why. There were things I wanted to do, experiences I wanted to create for myself and for others, something I wanted to become that I had to leave a comfortable situation to be able to do. I share this story not because the specifics of my situation are relatable, but because I think everyone has a why. When you find your why, you know your purpose. You have a clear emotional connection between what you're doing and why it matters to you. That's something that I think many people in a leadership role can relate to. When you have a clear why, you can lead with authenticity, conviction, and persuasive power. By contrast, leadership without vision eventually leads to burnout. The lack of a compelling direction saps your will to fight. When you don't know what you're fighting for, it's hard to find any hill you're willing to die on. So, back to Simon Sinek's idea. Start with why. He argues that our why, the thing that inspires us and allows us to inspire others, is formed early in life, and it rarely changes. So he helps people look to their past, to an origin story. He teaches people exercises like interviews with friends and brainstorming until they come to a moment of revelatory clarity, a rush of emotion, chills even, when you know you know. Something like the wand choosing the wizard. That model helps a lot of people. But here is one important truth this model overlooks. Your past doesn't have to define your purpose or your future. Your future can define your purpose. That's the insight I credit largely to the work of Dr. Benjamin Hardy. He's written several influential books, including one titled Be Your Future Self Now. Hardy argues that your future isn't the product of your past. It's actually a tool that can drive what you do in the present. And that changes everything. Instead of asking, who have I always been, you ask, who do I want to become? What future am I building toward? What kind of world would I be proud to help create? And that's when your why comes alive, not as a memory, but as a vision. But here's the rub you'll almost certainly encounter. As soon as you start asking future-facing questions, your brain fights back. It says, who do you think you are? You've never done anything like that. You're too fill in the blank. This is where most people stop. They wait for clarity, for proof, for confidence. They wait for someone else to give them permission. But leadership isn't about waiting. It's about making decisions. You choose a future that matters, and then you let that future change your present. You start thinking like that future version of yourself. You start making choices for future you. You make investments your current self might resist, but your future self will thank you for. And yes, it feels like risk, because it is, but it's also the only path to real alignment. Let me offer you a tool. You might call it the best possible self exercise. Here's how it works. You take 10 minutes and picture yourself, maybe 3 years from now. In the body of that future you see yourself and your team thriving. You're doing meaningful work. You have the things you most desire. You've grown into the kind of leader you admire. Now, write about it, as if it's already true. What does a day in that future life look like? What are you doing? What physical things around you reflect your success? Most importantly, how does it feel to be here? This isn't a journal prompt, it's a neural primer. Studies show that this kind of mental rehearsal strengthens optimism, goal clarity, and intrinsic motivation. The last question about how you feel is particularly important because when you pair that vision with positive emotion, gratitude, confidence, peace, you start rewiring your brain to believe it's possible. Dr. Joe Dispenza calls this emotional rehearsal, and neuroscience backs it up. When you emotionally experience your future, your body begins to live it as real. So, what's your why? It's not a slogan, it's not your resume. It's a vision of the future that inspires you to show up differently today. And here's the real leadership edge. When you lead from that kind of vision, people feel it. It creates trust. It sparks hope. It gives your team permission to connect with their best future selves too. I've observed that people don't follow titles. They follow people with conviction, people who have something worth moving toward. So, here's a challenge I'd like to leave with you this week. Take 10 minutes. Write about your best possible self. Maybe 3 years from now, maybe next year. Ask, what would that version of me do next? If you do this consistently, your future will stop feeling like a dream and start feeling like a plan. In the next episode, we'll talk about a new way of understanding the barriers to your goals, one that will probably challenge you, but I promise it will also give you fresh energy, hope, and courage. Thanks for listening to The Leadership Edge. If this episode sparked something for you, visit thelpc.com to learn more about paradox-aware leadership. Until next time, be curious, be courageous, and lead on.